Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today for our critical conversation in LIS celebrating Black men in librarianship. My name is Nicole Cook, and I am a professor and the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair at the University of South Carolina. So this has been an amazing series, and certainly last but not least, we have the last edition of this series for the spring, and we are so glad to have Rodney Freeman and Aisha Johnson join us today. So welcome, welcome, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sierra Harris, who is the Augusta Baker GA, for some housekeeping and introductions.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the final installment of this amazing series. You all are in for a treat today. So let's just jump straight into it. I have some quick housekeeping. First, being that the session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to every registered guest tomorrow morning. So get excited about that. And I want to challenge you to share it with at least 2 colleagues tomorrow when I send you the recording. I ask that you keep yourself muted and please turn your camera off unless you are presenting, but you are encouraged to engage in the chat throughout the presentation. If you have questions for today's guest, please send them to me. When we turn it over for question and answer, I will send all of the questions to the moderator, our wonderful moderator today. So send them to me as you think of them so that there's a better chance that your question will be answered. Now, on to the good stuff. Our featured guest today is Rodney Freeman. Over 13 years in the library field at various levels, building digital collections, working with databases, Rodney started his career working with the Digital Archives and Collection. Rodney has worked in academic, public, and government libraries and in multiple positions from a library page to a library administrator. Rodney founded Reminisce Preservation, which serves libraries, schools, nonprofits, and individuals by providing integrated tools and networks to create, interact, and preserve legacies easily. Today's conversation will be moderated by Dr. Aisha Johnson. Dr. Aisha Johnson, the Associate Director for Academic Affairs and Outreach at Georgia Institute of Technology Library, is a reveler of Southern Library history, information access, and literacy. Formerly MLIS Program Director for the School of Library and Information Science at North Carolina Central University, continuing as adjunct, she stands on her commitment to enhancing LIS through service, practice, and curriculum. She has a focus on the production of minority librarians and archivists as scholar practitioners. As a leader in the field, she was dubbed the 2020 Distinguished Alumni of Florida State University's iSchool for her research and scholarship, The African American Struggle for Library Equality, the untold story of the Julius Rosenwald Fund Library Program. Dr. Johnson also serves through professional organizations and is regularly sought out to contribute to discussions on representation and inclusion, LIS research, and strategic leadership. She, along with other Black librarians, were recently featured on Good Morning America, advocating for Black librarianship in the forthcoming documentary, The Black Librarian, produced by our featured guest today, Rodney Freeman. That is why I said you all are in for a treat. Let's all welcome Rodney Freeman and Dr. Aisha Johnson.
Thank you, Sierra. Thank you, Dr. Cook, for having us. Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending your afternoon hour with us. We hope it is as enriching as we anticipate. But I want to, of course, introduce you to the wonderful Rodney Freeman. How you doing today, Rodney?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for having me. Dr. Cook, Sierra, you guys are fantastic, and I appreciate you guys doing the work that you're doing. And yeah, that's the reason why we're doing a documentary to highlight you guys and what you guys do. So thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So let's dive into it. So, of course, being a Black male librarian is rare, right? So we're
Hmm.
highlighting the excellence, but mostly looking at the impact of what it means to be a Black male librarian. So what was the moment or event, the catalyst that made you say, I'm gonna be a librarian? What was that moment where it chose you?
Yeah, I remember it. So it happened when I was I wanted to go to law school, and I was in between jobs, and I was studying for the LSAT, and I saw a sign that said that they were hiring for pages. And at the time, I was putting out a whole bunch of resumes. I did have my master's degree in public administration, and I was getting rejected left and right. And so I was like, well, I just need a little job so I can, get my hair cut, really.
Right.
I
Pay
didn't
some
have no money,
bills.
right, to pay some bills. I was on the bike, I was living at my mom's house. And so I see this job, and so I got an interview as a page, and I remember it was Camille and Roland in Kankakee Public Library. They set me down, and it was like, well, you might be overqualified for this position. I was like, oh, here we go again. And she
Mhm.
was like, oh, no, no, I think you'd be a good at this. So that jumped it off. And then when I got into the Kankakee Public Library, I started doing stuff with teens,
Mhm.
started doing stuff with adults. And then I started seeing what they were bringing people into from the community. They were sitting them down and having them tell their story and
Right.
creating this like PBS documentary. I was like, oh, I want to do that. That's what I wanna do, and that's what really jumped it off right there.
The foreshadowing, right? Because look at you
Yeah.
now. So what would you say? It's funny. It's absolutely hilarious because, I
Mhm,
always say librarianship finds the right people at the right time in the right moment, but you never know in what lane librarianship is going to steer you, because at the end of the day, we're information professionals who are seeking
mhm.
to expand access, expand literacy, and tell our story. So as a Black male librarian, how do you feel about not only what you represent, but in general, Black male librarianship in this profession?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I feel I have a duality, right? I feel like I love it and I hate it at times.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna really be honest. I love being able to help people and find information and like get in there and be really nerdy and like, oh, look at this, look at this metadata.
Right.
you know, uh, I love that type of stuff. I hate the politics.
Yeah.
I hate the politics. I hate the microaggressions. I hate oh, are you really qualified to be telling me what to do type of thing. I hate all that. I hate
Mhm.
it. I mean that literally like if that stuff wasn't in the field, look, I could sleep on the pillow and I'd be straight.
I
But
understand that, but if that stuff wasn't in the field, who are we servicing?
eh, yeah,
Because most of the time that comes from the public, right? As Black professionals, we get the grunt of that.
yeah, yeah, we do, but we do get it from our colleagues too.
Yes.
And it's and I hate to say, but like I kind of expect it coming from public and stuff like that. You serve all types, especially working in a public library. You serve all types of walks of life and everything, and I feel like it's really your job to help people and guide people to
Mhm.
a higher plane of thought and all that type of stuff. But from sometimes from the colleagues, it could be the worst, and don't get me wrong, I have some great colleagues in some of the places that I've worked, but I've had some rotten ones too.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been kind of rough. It was really I will say that is really what sparked me to do this documentary is because I actually was on my way out of the profession. Like I had enough. I did the administrative level type of stuff. I was a library director.
Right.
And I was almost out of it until I met up with some people when I was at a conference, an ALA conference, and I saw a group of Black male librarians just kicking it, just telling the story, talking about what they were going through, but talking about how they want to help their patrons and how they want to
Right.
get in the community. They want to try this program out. And I'm like, this is something. I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is I need to." I said, if I'm gonna get back in this, I wanna be able to tell their story." So that's really
Right.
what prompted this. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. You say that because again, you never know where librarianship is going to lead you, but you ran into a group of people who look like you. people who
Mm-hmm.
represent you, people
Yep.
who are empathizing with what you're going through, and you ain't even got to say nothing, right? That's
Yep.
that I think people misinterpret when we say representation, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
beyond us trying to counter library anxiety. It's really about not only being able to service all of our patrons, our customers, our client, but it's also about that community within practice, right?
Yeah.
It's also
Yeah.
about, being able to have a support system. And you made a really good point that when it comes from your colleagues, it hurts. It's what it is, right? It hurts more because you know better, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
you should
Exactly.
know better,
Right.
So when we talk about, Black librarianship and how there's 7% Black librarians, right? So if there's 7% Black librarians, there may be 1 to 2% Black male librarians. Don't quote me on that. I'm pulling
Yeah.
that, but it's just y'all are smaller than even
Yeah.
the even the
Yeah.
sum, right? So
Yeah.
talk about some of those challenges you have faced, and in that group of male Black librarians, were there common, like what was the most common challenge that you faced, either with colleagues or the public?
How much time do we have? Wait.
Don't worry about it. They're gonna keep track of it. It's us. It's
you
us.
you might want to cut me off if you want me to tell it.
Mm, I'm
um,
pretty sure there's many people in the audience that'll be like, "Yep, that happened to me
yeah.
too."
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've been called outside my name before.
Mhm,
I've had my presentation changed at the last minute right before I was supposed to speak to the board. I've had, little like suggestions like he's okay, but it's just something about, I've been in an organization for several years, and then once I took a position, you know, they acted like I was, brand new.
mhm.
It's been a lot of things. I think one of the things that we have to go through as Black men is always we can't just come in the job and do the job. We got to
Right.
prove that we can do the job first.
Now, mind you, you already done
It is
went through the HR process, right? That
we already
qualifies you.
exactly. We already went through the HR process. You know my resume, but it's just like, and then we have to prove it. And it's not like how some others just have to prove it to their supervisors. We have to prove it to the people that work for us.
Exactly.
And it's just like, wait a minute.
That's
So
exhausting, right?
yeah, yeah, it's really interesting on just the barriers that we have to go through before we can even do our job, and that is, I feel like, and this is just Rodney talking, but that is the common amongst what I hear a lot of Black men is like we gotta prove so many, we gotta go through so many hurdles before we can
Mhm.
even get the job done. Just let
Right,
me get my job done. And
right.
I remember this clear as day. And I worked on a lot of projects. I've also worked on some projects where we had to do reconstruction in the building, and I worked on this one project when I was up in Chicago, and I was over the project of the reconstruction of the children's library in the
Mhm.
Harold Washington Library Center. And we actually got that stuff done pretty, it was very efficient. Like the working group that we had, the
Mhm.
project manager, the contractors, we all knew our job. And I was just like, wow, this was when you can cut out all that other bull,
Yes, yes, yes.
when you can cut
Absolutely.
out all that other bull, you can really get some stuff
You can
done.
you can make a difference. You can do your
Man,
job.
you can build a whole new library.
Come on. Come on. Just who would have thought? Just,
Yeah,
smooth
yeah,
sailings. Something that
right,
we don't necessarily always are a privilege we're not always allotted.
right,
It's to just
exactly.
exist in our positions to be able to do our
Yeah,
work to the description, right? So,
yeah.
but there has to be also, shifting a little bit. It has to be, there's positivity, right? There's
Oh
moments
yeah.
where you're just like, this is why I did it. So has that been other librarians or your patrons you serve? Like what's the impact of the influence there? They're just
Oh
those
yeah.
moments, because it gets frustrating, but what's those
Oh yeah.
moments that keep you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm glad you said that because there is a balance, right? It is
Yeah.
it's hard, it's heavy. and then it's some good stuff in there. And like the good stuff that's in there for me is like the people who I've hired who've gone on and become librarians who
Yeah.
were kind of hesitant about, if I wanted to do this, or they've gone on and done other careers. Like I take pride in being able to bring in people and say, hey, use this time so you can do what you want,
Right.
figure out what you want to do, whether it is continue to work here or you go somewhere else. So I really do take pride in the people who have worked for me and have gone on and done some good stuff. That's been really great. I remember have this one memory when I was in Indianapolis. I was at a community branch, and it
Mhm.
was this kid. We had this policy where if you had people coming in, if you had kids coming in when they weren't supposed to be in the building, they were supposed to be at school, you were supposed to call truancy and all this other type of stuff. But it was this kid who came in, and he was new. I remember he was from Chicago, recently relocated there from Chicago, and he was talking to me about why he was there in the building, because I was saying, look, you're really not supposed to be here during this time, but since you're gonna be here, here's a book.
Mhm.
And I gave him one of the books that I read when I was first started, really heavily reading, and that was Frederick Douglass' autobiography. And he sat down, he flipped through a couple of pages, and then he put it up, and he walked out the library, and I was like, okay, well, but he came back in,
Mhm.
and he got the book, took it out, flipped through a couple pages, put it up, and then he came back in a couple more times, and I was like, huh, might be something right here. Hey, he keeps on flipping through the book. He might just read it,
Right.
and he did. He sat down, he kept on doing this. He kept on coming back in, he kept on picking up the book and reading a little bit, and then and then he stopped coming for a while.
Mhm.
And then maybe a couple months later, he was in a better space, and he came back in, and he was like, "You know what? I want to thank you." And I was like, "Hey man, I just gave you a book." And but it's stuff like that that I remember,
Right.
so I got a number of other stories. We started a community garden when I was in St. Louis, and the kids, it was a food desert, and we had a garden that was indoor but it was outdoor type of thing, and we were teaching the kids how to grow like fruits and vegetables, and
Mhm.
that was fantastic too. I got a lot of more stories, but those are the 2 that really stick out.
I mean, you said, I only gave you a book. I don't know why librarians be downplaying the things that we do that actually change lives. Like you just
Yeah,
we say it so casually because this is our passion work. It's our
yeah,
heart's desire to, enhance literacy through access, right? And
right,
while you say you
right.
just gave him a book, you shifted his trajectory.
Mhm,
That is advocacy work, right? So
yeah.
with that, and of course, things like the community garden, what other intention I would say do you put behind DEI work in the profession? Because we do it, of course, naturally with our patrons just by simply existing, by just giving them a book, right? So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
about how do you translate that into your professional service?
So, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it really real. I,
Please.
for the longest, had shied away from joining organizations and doing stuff on a national level just because I was in a space where I was trying to really fit into the profession, but at the same time, I had a family,
Mhm.
ex-wife now, but I was trying to make sure I got back home for my daughter, and so she could see me, but still trying to climb that ladder
Yeah.
because I was the only one paying bills and I needed money, and so it did take a turn. I would say back in 2018 when I really got to a point where it's like, how can I contribute? How can I use the skills set
Mhm.
that I have as an ex cataloger, right, turned manager,
Mhm.
but still have a passion for that? What can I do to help to really show us in a positive light, black men, black women in a positive light, so we don't continue to have these stories? And that's when I developed the 2 platforms of Black Male Archives and
Mhm.
Powerful Women of Color. And I was like, look, you know, I don't have time, and I can't, commit, so much in, some of the national organizations, but this is what
Right,
I can do. I can go out here and find these positive stories and develop a database where people can find these stories and be able to see positive stories, and,
right.
I feel like that's how I've been able to contribute, is by developing those websites.
Tell us a bit more about those projects,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it sounds
So,
like they were the precursor to later
yeah,
on we'll discuss the documentary. So tell me more
yeah.
about those.
Yeah, so Black Male Archives, the whole I remember when I was like I was through this. It was I was laying on the couch and I heard the news story about the black man who knocked on the wrong door and the
Mhm.
woman opened it up and she shot him. And I
Yes,
was just like, what is it that is just so scary about black men that we can't even knock on the wrong door, and I started thinking about it. I was like, there's so many positive stories out there,
right.
but they get buried by the negative ones. So if I can create a platform that shows all the positive stories, because I'm not going to even worry about the negative ones because I know the news is going to take care of that.
Got it
I'm
covered.
going to focus. Right, they got that covered. I want to make sure that you can find the positive stories, like this man's dad. Because this kid was acting up, he went and sat in his classroom and was
Mhm.
sitting right there with him to make sure that he was going to act right. Nobody hears about that story,
No,
but that is actually one of the stories that came out of my database. Or a group of dads in, I think, New Orleans formed this dad gang to help the kids get. Nobody knows about that story,
mhm.
but that's in the database. And the same thing for powerful women of color.
Right.
These women who are have so many accolades, that are doing, helping find cures for the COVID, and doing finding new elements on the periodic table. I want to make sure people know about this. So that was really the start of it, and we really tried to take that and put it on social media. But then I started thinking, I was like, look, if you put everything on
Mhm.
social media can change their regulations and their rules.
This is true.
It's not a true archive. I felt like I needed something outside of that platform that we can really archive it and people can go back to it and refer to it. And yeah, that was the start of it. That was the start of it right there. And then we were just like, oh, wait a minute, we can create other content. We can create a
Right.
podcast. We can create a newsletter. We can create documentaries. We can create VR. We
We
can
can do it
create. We
all.
can. We can do it all.
Yeah, whatever we can fathom, which to me sounds like perfect example when I tell people you don't have to be in a leadership role to be a leader.
Yeah.
While leadership is innate, it is also a taught skill set. It's really passion that is more structured, right? So when you talk about, powerful Black women of influence and, the Black male stories, that's
Yeah.
leadership. So how did you come up with those strategies to engage the communities to actually incite those types of stories? Because that's a different form of information gathering
Yeah.
and sharing.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things, so I've been very passionate about digital preservation.
Mm,
And I would go into churches. I started a nonprofit organization to really show and impress upon a lot of people why digitization is important, right? And why
right.
you need it to back up and preserve. So I've been very passionate about that and doing scanathons and stuff like that and talking to people. So that's really how I went out and to talk about people and try and engage the community. Look, anywhere I could, whether it be a school board meeting that has uh 100 people, or a little program that has maybe 5 people that showed up, I would talk about the importance of digitization. So
Right.
I love that. And I think that's my ministry, right? Everybody has their ministry. That's
Everybody has
definitely
one.
yeah.
Yes. Yes,
That's definitely
absolutely.
my ministry, because like that's really what I went to a library science school for, was to go in and be able to develop CMSs and manipulate, and I started off as a cataloger, so
A black male cataloger. Oh, we just getting more and
exactly.
more rare, ain't we?
Exactly. Yeah, I started doing copy cataloging and original cataloging. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I got to give a shout out to my old cataloging professor because we still talk. She still helps me when I need advice when it comes to the databases on what should I use doubling core, should I use mods and all this other type of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Shout out to all our catalogers because first of all, rare breed right now, right? Rare
Yeah.
breed and cataloging, much needed in our profession. Also for reparative work, we definitely need
Mhm.
catalogers. So absolutely, please learn cataloging, everybody.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
talk about going to these community groups and things of that nature, I mean, I was going to ask you about contributing to social justice and community empowerment initiatives, but it sounds like from the very beginning, from even becoming a librarian to doing interviews, talking to other male librarians and things of that nature, and then really getting involved in the community, it sounds like you just naturally or innately had this desire and affinity for things like community empowerment.
Hmm.
So do you feel
Hmm.
like it sounds natural, but do you feel like your role as a librarian elevated that, or you had a mission to go towards that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think my role, well, if I'm gonna pause, hard pause right there, and let me talk
Hmm.
about my family.
Let's do it.
Let me talk about. So my mom is originally from her family is originally from Henderson, Kentucky,
Hmm.
and which is, if you know where Evansville, Indiana is, and you know that little part of Henderson, Evansville, and it's considered the South. And then my grandmother moved up to Chicago and everything, but we still had roots in Kentucky. So I would go there every summer back from Chicago to Henderson. And when I went into my great aunt's house, who we call Aunt Melissa, she
Hmm.
always we have this family painting on the wall of the great great grandfather who used to be a former slave who then started his own business. So let's just say around 6 years old, I start hearing that story. But the story then is always told to me every year, every summer that I go down to Kentucky. And it gets ingrained in my head that, we come from people who used to be former slaves who started their own business.
Right.
So, and then you have that, and then you have my dad's mentality, and you don't want to get started on him. He's funny. He's very, he definitely should have been in the military, but he worked for the government. He was an engineer, very by the rules.
Hmm.
If you 15 minutes late, if
You're
you
late.
15 minutes early, you late.
Yep.
That
Hmm.
type of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so then you have that structure. Then you have my mom who skipped several grades, is very bright and very
Hmm.
artsy and stuff like that. So, you have those elements, and then you fall into librarianship. And I was just like, oh man, this is just a perfect fit for
It's a
me.
happy
I
medium.
was right, that heavy medium, and I can learn a little bit about everything, and I can be my dad's son and be almost a little structured at times, or I can be my mom's son
Yeah.
and have this arts and creative part around me. So you can be what you want to be, and that's actually, man, some of our virtual interviews and I know we're gonna get into it, but like the people who are they're artists, and then
Hmm.
they're librarians, or they're actors, and then they're librarians, or they're doing this other, they're researchers. It's so many things that you can do with librarianship. So yeah, it fit me. It did fit me.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna jump to your documentary because I know I'm going to spend a good amount of time discussing that because we keep mentioning it. It's always like we teasing people, right?
Huh?
So let's
Yeah,
jump into
right.
that about the documentary because I am super excited about this. I've known you for quite some time, so it's something that you had talked about before, and then
Hmm.
we jumped into it, right? So
Right.
when you talked about you know, the Black male librarian group that you ran into, you know, at an event and y'all are talking about these different things. Was that, or was it a different moment that that made you say, I'm gonna do this? Like, I'm
Yeah.
done with the organizations. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, you know, it was that moment that like it started processing, and then somebody did chime in, and I want to give credit where credit's due. Somebody did chime in when I posted the photo on Facebook, and it was like, this should be a documentary. And I was like, get that out of here. This should be a
Mm-hmm,
documentary.
mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm,
then I did start down that path of asking people and saying, hey, can we sit some meetings up? Let's go ahead and, a couple of things, stuff falls through. And look, hey, I feel like God puts you where you need to be, and God puts
always.
everybody that needs to be in your life at the right time, because the people, the team that I came that just popped up, that was nothing but God, because it was like I was at a point, like, I had the idea, I was thinking about it, I didn't know which way to go, and then
Mm,
look, bam, Byron comes in. Hey, I do videos. What you,
mm-hmm, right.
Adriana, Angel, even my researcher that I have now,
Mm-hmm,
the interviewers that are helping me out, everybody, the interviewees who are
yeah,
stepping up and saying, yes, yes, I will, you can interview me.
yeah,
I mean, because it doesn't happen unless you have people who are experts and who can talk to it. So, Dr.
absolutely.
Johnson.
You know, listen, you know, I'm always willing to talk about these things, but you know, so tell us what your aim, the impact you're going for in this, and with the list of Black librarians that you have strategically selected for this interview, and how many interviews you've done so far. Tell us some of the interviewees. You know, give us that impact we aiming for.
Right, right. And I want to first say that, Um, if I could, I would interview everybody and put everybody into the documentary. Um, just doesn't work like that, and
It
that's one
don't.
of the reasons. And that's one of the reasons why we opened up the web episode of the podcast. I was like, man, I mean, some really magnificent stories on the
Mhm,
web episodes and podcasts too, just along with the documentary. But what we tried to do, we did try to look at the country,
yeah.
and we did say, hey, we want representation from east, west, north, south, all that good
Hmm.
stuff. We want to make sure that the people that we do pull in can talk to certain themes that we want to cover in the documentary. So
Yeah.
people that we've selected really are talking to the themes that we're going to talk about. So let's take, for example, the history of Black librarianship, dealing with the school libraries, dealing with the anti-literacy laws, dealing with the sit-ins, dealing with the freedom libraries, dealing with, what a library had to go through on a daily basis, to contemporary times, right?
Right.
We talk a lot to, because we don't want to just focus on, history. We want to get to also, hey, did you know that this person is
Hmm.
doing this over here? Did you know that this person has this partnership and this
Right.
collaboration, and I mean, it's blowing things out of the water. So we want to make sure that the current day Black librarians get their roses, and also past Black librarians who stepped up
Absolutely.
and said, "Hey, you can't just hold conferences in certain locations where we're not allowed. You're gonna have
That's
to make
right.
it free for everyone. I mean, available for everyone." So, we want to make sure we tell the whole story in this documentary. So, yeah, like I said, I wish I could interview everybody for this, but look, we're gonna make sure everybody is represented for this. So,
Exactly, exactly. I think it's extremely important because while we do focus on the legacy, those people that we absolutely know in the profession on various levels, it is important to kind of touch every single, not only geographical region, but also the different library types, scholarship,
yes.
LIS professors, all of that
Mhm.
good jazz. So we're super excited about that. So can you name some of your interviewees?
Dr. Johnson.
I mean, I know I was your
One.
favorite, so, you know, there's no pressure,
What?
no pressure.
Well, we have some great ones. Look, we interview let's take it to Las Vegas. Of course, we interview Calvin Watson, and I've been knowing him for a while, and some of the dynamic programs that he's doing out there.
Yes,
But he also
absolutely.
has a team. He also has a group of librarians that we got on the stage, and we got three of them on the stage, and the passion that came through when they were talking about Black librarianship.
Nice.
If you see the clip, the trailer, the promo, we
Mhm.
used those three, and I mean that was a really great interview. So big up to Faith, Billy, and Desmond
Mhm.
for that.
That was
We
powerful. Talk
It
about black
was.
male librarianship, right? Let
Yeah,
alone it being black male librarianship, but in the public library arena.
yeah,
There's not
yeah.
many, like they like collecting them like infinity stones. Listen, there's not
Mhm.
many in one location. That's
Mhm.
amazing. You know, I like
Yeah,
I see it on social media and I just think how influential that is for
yeah,
their patrons, how
yeah, yeah,
influential it is for the profession to
yeah,
see that, and
yeah.
how many more black male librarians they are influencing and inspiring. So to see
Oh
that
yeah,
clip and all of y'all in one place is like,
yeah.
this is why we do it, right?
This is why we
In
do this.
those
Yeah,
moments of all of the foolishness, it's like,
right,
there's a bunch of black male librarians on the stage, and it's not even a conference, you know.
right.
So it's really good to see things like that, similar to the situation at North Carolina A&T. You know,
Yeah.
so you have wherever you see, we don't often see black male librarians, not always in high positions, but let alone groups, right?
Mhm.
So I thought
Mhm.
that was extremely powerful.
Yeah.
um, how about with the documentary? How are you going about documenting the history of Black librarianship?
Oh, experts, right? So in before I talk about that, we
Mhm,
did have some awesome ones too. We got to interview Jamar Remy, who brought in Common in his library, and then we
mhm.
also went to New York and some other places. So it's really powerful. Okay, so how how are, how are we going back about documenting the history? It's a lot of research. There are um, researchers who have written extensively on the subjects of desegregation in public libraries. I've interviewed some of those researchers. Also, what we're also doing is that we want to go to people who kind of were there. There was been a couple of people that we've talked to in the documentary that had firsthand contact with Dr. E.J. Josie, right? Were actually recruited by the E.J. Josie, and people who knew him well. So we want to make sure that we talk
Yes,
to the elders and make sure that they're represented. And one of the things that I'm advocating for is that once we get out of the even during our editing process, I want to do focus groups like with small groups of people that we've either interviewed or people who are maybe older. I want to make sure we get the story right.
yes,
Right.
yes.
But it's a lot of research. Yeah, I can't tell you how many books I read since now in the end of November, like a
Mhm.
lot
Yeah,
about libraries, like the history of libraries. Like there's this one book I'm reading that had really, it's mostly it's being the history of libraries, but I'm going through it just to make sure that I'm able to tell this story because I want this story to be. I don't want to put something out there and then it's going to be like, fact check
yeah.
everything is wrong. No,
Mhm. No,
I
no,
want to
listen,
make sure
that's
that
not
we get this
librarian
story.
like.
Exactly. I cite my sources, right?
Yes,
I want to make sure that we talk about the little known history though. Like a lot of people have forgotten about William C. Boulevard, who was a
yes,
collector.
yes,
You
yes.
know, so what did I do? I start researching and then I start reaching out to people and they was like, "Did you know he was cousins to the guy who was the first black librarian male at the Library of Congress?" I was like, "No, I didn't."
Oh,
Oh, or like the other day, like finding out that Zora Neale Hurston was a librarian.
a
It's
lot of our
all these
literary
little
greats. Yes.
right. Talking to Dr. Cook and she telling me that Augusta Baker worked for Sesame Street. It's like, you know, and then
We were
or
shaking and
EJ,
baking. Low key or
huh?
not, Black librarians have been shaking and baking and molding a lot
Exactly.
of education in society. You know, I think I think with the documentary, not I think I know the doors to information that has been put away, backburned, not recognized is going to really highlight the importance of Black librarianship, right?
Hmm.
But we're running low on time. I'm gonna push it a little bit so
Okay.
Sierra be nice to
Yeah.
me. But so let's be real. This takes money. This
Yeah.
takes absolute money, and I know in that it is, you know, a process. But talk about some of your sponsorships, so you know
Mhm.
they know how important this work is.
And I'm glad you asked that because our sponsorships are great. Look, I mean, it takes a lot of money in the support, and it sometimes it's not just money. It's sometimes people are saying, "Hey, we gonna tell everybody about what you guys are doing." Like, you know,
That's right.
that is that's sponsorship too. That's resources that we need too. We need people to know about what we're doing, you know, so it won't just stay in the vacuum. So every library is our newest one, you know, and we actually did uh um recording with them earlier this week, a conversation with them with the executive director for every library. So we're grateful for them to
Check
have
his
them on
LinkedIn.
board.
It's available right now. Check his LinkedIn,
Yes,
please.
yes, yes. Lyricist is another sponsor, and OCLC is another sponsor. So we have three great sponsors right there. We are reaching out for more just because it does take a lot of money. Like, look, we are coming out of our pockets for this, and it's like you wouldn't believe how much one photo to license one photo can cost. $400.
Yeah, yeah.
Easy.
Hmm.
Like, you know, so that's I mean, I know people see me like, hey, can you know, chip in? But yeah, $400 easy for one photo.
Hmm.
You know, so I mean, you know, and then don't let's not talk about video footage where they
Right.
can bill you $200 a second.
Hmm.
You know, so it's that's the reason why we keep on reaching out, you know, to travel to these places to get these interviews, the the PR that we're going to you know, the PR firm that we're going to be hiring. You know, it's money for this. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to donate if they can.
So how can people support the documentary? How can we donate and sponsor, but beyond, you know, word of mouth is great.
Right.
Telling people, you know, telling you, you know, I've shared a number of interviewees with
Yeah.
you and all of this
Yeah, yeah.
stuff and, you know, supplying space for interviews and stuff like that. But how can people financially support this documentary?
Yes, GoFundMe is up there and it's up under "Are You a Librarian?" You know, Rodney Freeman, "Are You a Librarian?" documentary. And like I said, all that money goes to, you know, the production part of this endeavor. Um, I want to, and I think this is the perfect space to announce this is that, you know, whatever proceeds we get from this documentary, we're going to be donating that some to, you know, I want to donate that to BCALA and to some of the local chapters of BCALA to help fund passion projects, you know, because one of the things that I found that with my career, I feel like I'm in a good space right now because I'm able to do this.
Right.
You know, some other people might not be in that same space because they might have their passion stifled and not able to do certain projects that they want to do. I think people should be able to do, you know, have an outlet, you know, and I think that's how we're going to grow as Black librarians. Like, you know, I look at almost everything that's done in America
Right.
and I see a lot of us in in transforming things, right? You know, and I want to make sure that even with where I'm at in librarianship, how can we transform that? Well, maybe let's start doing some of these passion projects. You
Right.
know, there's a lot. Telling you, like, I know I keep on talking about these virtual interviews, but like I'm just so honored that I get people will say, yes, yeah, I'll take the time to sit and interview. And then they tell me that, you know, I'm researching this and I've done this and I've been overseas and I've did this and I've invented this thing. I'm like, what?
Yes. Because you're giving them the platform to share this. That's the
Yeah,
beautiful thing. I think
yeah,
the documentary goes even beyond your intended impact.
yeah.
the level of exposure that people are receiving, not from just, Black librarianship, but they're being given a platform to share their passion projects, their
Yeah,
scholarship, their research. It really
yeah,
validates their expertise,
yeah.
which is something that while we have these degrees, while
Mm-hmm.
we have these jobs, we still
Hmm.
have these challenges
Right,
where we feel like our knowledge is being questioned. So to
right.
have that validation from each other, again,
Mm-hmm.
that community of support, you're building a community in a new way.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely beautiful. So what advice would you give as we wrap up? What advice
Mm-hmm.
would you give, particularly for Black male librarians and the potential challenges that just come with?
First and foremost, it's been a journey for me to to say something like this because I haven't really been this vocal at, talking about my faith, but you know, whatever faith you have, make sure that you pray to whatever God you pray to and talk to whatever God you talk to about which direction is best for
Yes.
you because that's what I did. And I didn't used to do that, when I was trying to
Mhm.
climb that ladder. And that wasn't for me, but when I start to ask, is this the direction that you want me to go into? Hey, look, it's hard. And, I'm looking at it like, "Ugh, I got this bill. Where's this money gonna come from?" But
Right.
you know what? Then I think about, look, and go out and do Uber because I've done that. I went out
Mhm.
and did some Uber and like I need a quick $200-300 so I can pay for this photo.
That's right. That's right. Because it costs money.
I got a car. Look, I got a car. I can put some gas in it.
That's
But
right.
look, that's the first and foremost thing that you need to do, right? Second thing, and this is just my opinion. Second thing, just know yourself, right? I know it's cliche, but whether if that's taking notes or making a journal about who you are, what you like, do that.
Yes.
And then don't let anybody put you in a box because it's like I go back to that. I'm old school. I go back to that Matrix. You say you got to remember there is no spoon. There is no, it isn't a box. People will try to put you in a box and say, you
Yes.
know what, this is what you do and that's all you do. No, no. And if people get mad, well, oh well.
Yeah. Them
This
not your
is this is
people.
a family show, so hey, you can think about what you want.
Right. Listen, if they want to put you in a box, that's not your people. But I
Right.
absolutely agree because you can be doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, but maybe not in the lane or pathway in which the universe, your God, would like you to be doing it, right? And being aligned with your true self, you can be aligned with that. So I absolutely agree on that. So Rodney, this has been an absolute pleasure. It was nice of you to have a
Oh yeah.
conversation with me so we can invite other people
Yeah.
to witness it. We
Yeah,
go
yeah.
back,
This is good.
we go back.
Yeah.
So it's always a pleasure. And Rodney has interviewed me for the interview. So it has
Yep.
been very nice to flip the script and
Yeah.
interview you. So
Oh,
we're going
thank
to
you.
see what questions we have from Quintus. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Charge it to me not knowing all these names versus my heart. When putting together the documentary, how did you find your sample of Black male or female librarians? So I guess the start.
Okay, so the very start is I use LinkedIn and I would say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about." Do you guys do you guys want to say so the initial start though, we did have a start before that. We came up with an initial outline of what we wanted to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we did say that, we want to talk about history. We
Yep.
want to talk about these topics. We want to talk about, moving through the civil rights, Jim Crow, contemporary, what are people doing now, who's doing programs in the library, who's doing programs with social media, who's doing children's story time, who's doing who are the pioneers. So we thought about a lot of stuff. Adriana was like, when because we had to ask all the pre-interviewees. And I don't
Right.
think everybody knows this, but the pre-interviews had 5 questions and we asked them the
Yes.
same 5 questions.
Ah.
And yeah, yeah. So and it was like, and who your pioneers, and like if you give a talk, what would you give the talk on? What does it mean to be a black librarian? And it was really just looking at, everybody was great, but it was just like, okay, so I know that this person can really talk about the history of this. I
Mhm.
know they can talk about this topic or they can talk about that topic. That's the only way that we could select people. And then we making sure that we had representation from North, East, West, and South, right? So that was one of the things that's how we went about kind of choosing who's going to be on the documentary
Didn't
part.
know
And
that.
then
I mean, I remember the pre-interviews, but I didn't know you asked the same questions of
Mhm,
everyone. But that's there's just step one there, Quinn, is information gathering and making sure, even within our very Black librarianship documentary, we still being representative.
exactly,
Inclusion
exactly,
all the way. So
exactly.
from Nathan, what is a reasonable way for me to secure a list of Black male librarians in Chicago, where I live, and study at Chicago State University MSLIS program? All right.
All
Or
right.
create a list if one cannot be given by the ALA Chicago Association. So, where's a reasonable pathway for him to really secure a list of Black male librarians in Chicago?
Probably two places, right? There's the Chicago BCALA affiliate there. And then also the national BCALA definitely probably could, they can reach out to membership and might give you a list.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to think if there's some, there was this one Black Metropolis Research
Mhm.
Consortium,
Yep.
BMRC.
Yep.
That's another place that he can maybe link up with some people there. Um, oh, there's this group out of Chicago that's doing some great stuff, the Blackavists.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, I get in contact with them. They're doing some really fascinating stuff with making sure people know how to preserve their history and document their history. So definitely reach out to them. But yeah, I'd say those four.
Yeah, and also I would check with some of the historical societies in Chicago
Mm,
because
yeah,
Chicago is like like Atlanta, right?
trouble.
And a
Yep.
lot of the history that's documented in back in that time period, being a librarian was like, I mean, it was top of the line career for us, right? So, but a
Mhm.
lot of people were librarians, but actually didn't work in libraries. So,
Yeah.
look into that as well. Check with your historical society. There's a lot of
Black
literary
collectors.
greats who had librarianship training, but actually did
Yeah.
not work as librarians. They were
Yeah.
writers and artists. So,
Yep.
especially with Chicago Renaissance, I would definitely check that out. Another question from Quintus: do you go out of your way to bring or females into the profession? Do you recruit into the profession? I think we all might do
Oh,
that by default.
yes. I I I do recruit. I do it like if I'm talking to people about it, because anywhere I go, I do talk to people about me. I think sometimes I really gotta pull my. I went on a guys trip and I was talking about this stuff, and I'd be like, let me be mindful. Let me pull myself back a little bit. Because I just started going on a tangent, and they were like, Rodney, we know you're a librarian, so
It come with the
I try to.
territory.
Yeah, yeah, I try to. I
You
try
can't
to.
help it. I feel like if I don't drop my friends some random facts, they're gonna think something's
Right,
wrong. So I'm just
right,
keeping them, not worried about me. You can't help yourself, right? What
right.
do you love most as we wrap up? What do you love most about being a specifically Black male librarian?
So let's just say I love black people. So and I love the history and the more I'm
Right.
just gonna be honest, the more I'm doing this research, the more that, I find out about how we have had an effect on librarianship in America because
Yes.
we don't even want to talk about how we've had an effect on librarianship outside of this this country because
Yes.
it's there. It's a lot of books that I've read, will try to kind of say, well, it started in Europe, but no, it didn't. It started in
Mhm.
Africa.
That's right.
And it's yeah. So I mean I like learning the history and like oh, I didn't know about that. Like I remember the first time I found out about the 1939 sit-in in Alexandria, Virginia, being the
People
first
don't
one.
realize the sit-ins started at the libraries. They don't
Exactly.
realize it, but
They don't realize that.
that's
Like,
why we doing this work.
did you know that both Thurgood Marshall and Martin Luther King used libraries? Like Thurgood Marshall,
Yes,
one of his first cases was to desegregate a public library.
that's right.
Martin Luther King was always talking about desegregation of public libraries because we pay our tax dollars and wasn't able
That's
to use
right.
them.
Absolutely. But why do I not have access to public accommodations? Oh, you don't
Exactly.
trigger me. Why do I
Yep.
not have access to public accommodations, but I'm giving you my tax dollars? See, libraries were the sit-in place, right? But they didn't get the media attention that they needed.
Exactly.
We had to
They
go
didn't
to
have
the
the
lunch counter.
photographs. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Exactly. Thank you, Rodney.
Damn.
We gonna stop on that note because you know where this will go. So I hear Dr. Cook. I hear. But thank you so much, Rodney, for
Thank
taking
you.
your time this afternoon, allowing me to flip the script and interview you and highlight the great work, the legacy work that you are doing
Oh, thank
with
you.
your documentary and as a Black male librarian. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Cook.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to today's dynamic duo. I think you all should take this on the road because we can tell you've had some conversations before. So
We
we've
do. We
certainly,
do.
yes, we certainly benefited from that today. So thank you so much. And this is, as we saw in the chat as well, an amazing way to conclude this series. And I just want to take an opportunity because I think there's some folks in the audience who have been at all 5 sessions of this series, and that means so much. And we've been getting such amazing response to this series, which just further emphasizes the importance of Black men in librarianship. So we've been very fortunate to have all of our speakers and all of our amazing moderators for this series. So we are very grateful. So with that said, we are done for the day. We are done for this series. But, as always, stay tuned and the Baker Lectures will be back before you know it. So thank you all so much. Eternally grateful. Please, everyone, support the documentary. We'll include links and things when we send out the recording and when we put it up on the Baker Lecture page. So as always, thank you for your support.